So in example 1, we are given that angle A is 60 and sides B and C are 20 and 30 respectively. Notice we don't have a side and opposite angle in any of these. So this is when you do not or cannot use the law of sines. We give you the formulas, law of sines, law of cosines, but you're going to have to know when to use them. Law of sines is used if you have a side and opposite angle given. Here we don't. So we do have an angle A, so then side A has to be on the other side of this formula, B and C minus 2B and C in our law of cosines. Filling in for B and C, B and C, and cosine of 60, don't forget the 2 here. So we have 400, 900 minus 1200, and cosine of 60 is a half. I have 1300 minus 600, that's 700, but don't forget that's a squared. That's a squared. Root it. Well, root 700. 700 is 7 times 100. 100 is a perfect square. The square root of 100 is 10. That gets to come out. The 7 is stuck behind. Next, we're going to use the law of sines, but we're going to be smart about it. In the law of sines, we might have the ambiguous case. But since it's side angle side, there's only one triangle that fits this description. So it can't be the ambiguous case, but we have to worry about the big angle. Is it obtuse or acute? So what you do is you avoid it. And what you want to do instead is find the other angle, which has to be acute. The two small angles have to be acute. The big angle opposite the big side might be acute, might be obtuse, but here's how we're going to get around this. Let's go for B. We know it's going to be the acute angle. We know side B. There's our law of sines, which we can use. We cross multiply and solve for sine of B. Here is the value for sine of B. Do inverse sine of that value, and we get this angle. So that's angle B. We were given angle A, so to find angle C, we take 180 because the triangle has to add up to 180, subtract each of the angles I know, and I'll get the third angle. If I find the two acute angles, then this biggest angle will take care of itself, whether it's obtuse or acute. So again, we were given two sides. Here's the third side. We're given one angle. Here are the other two angles. So here's example 2, and also notice we have a side but not the opposite angle, a side but not the opposite angle, a side but not the opposite angle. So here's where law of sines will not work. What's nice about the law of cosines is it'll take care of itself as to whether the large angle is acute or obtuse. What will happen is if the angle is acute, the cosine value will be positive, and you'll get an angle between 0 and 90. If the cosine value is negative, well, that will swing you into the second quadrant and give you an angle between 90 and 180, an obtuse angle. Remember, inverse cosine gives you an angle between 0 and 180, between 0 and pi. So here we go. So the goal or the idea is, if you're given side, 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 always start with the biggest side to get the biggest angle. So in this case it's B for the biggest side and the biggest angle. And so B, side B goes here. Angle B we don't know. and here's sides A and C, the other two sides. Don't have to memorize the formula, just make sure that the two side and angle are opposite each other, and these are the other two sides. Now, there's a mistake that students tend to make. What they do is they just isolate cosine of b. What they'll do is they'll do this whole calculation and then divide that into 81. But that is wrong, wrong, wrong. Break it down. Obviously, the 6 squared and the 4 squared are attached by addition, so we subtract them. But when we get to this piece that's now left after I take off these two terms, this portion here is attached to the cosine by multiplication. So then I now divide just this piece, not the whole thing in front of the cosine b. So now cosine b is by itself. Notice the value is negative. So when I do inverse cosine, I'll get a obtuse angle. Let me show you that on the calculator. So let's do the 9 squared, subtract the 6 squared, subtract the 4 squared. Enter. And then we divide that by, now, you better package this. You want the whole denominator, negative 2 times 6 times 4 as your whole denominator. What you could also do is do alpha and F1, choose choice 1, and give yourself a horizontal fraction bar. Then you can do this again, 9 squared, subtract 6 squared, subtract 4 squared, and then here you don't need parentheses, negative 2 times 6 times 4, and enter, and I hope we get the same thing, and we do. Then to find the angle, since this is the cosine value of the angle, we do second cosine, and then let's put this value in after the, so you go up arrow on the calculator, enter, pop that in there, I'll close the parenthesis, and there's the angle. And I rounded it to the nearest 3 decimal places. Then to get the other two angles, I can use the law of sines, because now I have the angle B and the side opposite. Here's my complete fraction, which I didn't have before. But now that I have this angle, here's our complete fraction. Let's find angle A. So there's side A. Cross multiply and solve for sine A. Here's the value. The inverse is 32.089. Now that I have two angles, angle A and angle B, well, the three angles have to add up to 180. So to find angle C, I take 180 and subtract each of these angles, and there is the third angle. Notice, if I have an obtuse angle, I am guaranteed the other two angles are acute, because to make 180, if one is bigger than 90, then the other two has to be smaller than 90. If I have two angles bigger than 90, I'm going to get bigger than 180, which cannot happen. So things that we just did, if you have side angle side, you have this angle, you'll find the side opposite it. That's not a problem with the law of sines. Then when you go to the law of cosines, then when you go to the law of sines, always find the shorter or smaller angle opposite the shorter side, because you are guaranteed it's going to be obtuse. And then once you have those two angles, you can subtract from 180, and the third angle will take care of itself. If you have side, 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 always look for the angle opposite the largest side, so that if it's obtuse, it'll take care of itself. And then the law of sines, you can finish up being guaranteed that the angle is going to be acute, no ambiguous case.